Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. My name is Eric, and I am joined by Yuki Bender, proud owner of so many titles. I'm not even going to bother listing them all out at this point. But to me, she'll always be the 2021 Canadian National Champion. So I'm going to go with that one first. Because that's obviously the most prestigious you've had, I'm pretty sure, in my mind. So with that, we have our Worlds tier. First of all, welcome back to the channel, Yuki. I know it's been a little while. You've been quite busy with your own content, huh?
Yeah. Been doing lots of content over on our podcast and Patreon. Lots of traveling for events too. When I stopped teaching as much, I was able to travel more, and then I kind of had more time and less time all at
Yeah,
once.
that's
Yeah.
fair. Committed to the passion here. So Rob's busy hosting a Halloween event a week before Halloween. And so it's just gonna be me and Yuki for this one. Obviously, she's been testing more for Worlds. I thought I was gonna go to Worlds. I ended up not going, just couldn't really stomach the extra expense. But Yuki's definitely going to Worlds. What hero is she on? Well, she doesn't know either. So don't worry about that. But what we do know is we have opinions about heroes that we've been playing for the last couple weeks here. And so when this video comes out, Worlds will be that same week. So you can take a peek. If other people are in fidget spinner land, maybe they'll take a bit and maybe they'll choose a hero based on this tier list, which would be hilarious. But maybe that is a thing to go. So without further ado here, this order is essentially set order for anyone watching. More or less, welcome to Wraith all the way down to Rosetta, right? Nothing to do with alphabetical or like anything along those lines, right? So we're gonna start. Oh yeah, and then S tier down to C tier, we've defined as meta definers. So these are the ones that we think are going to be the biggest portion of the meta, the decks that people are going to be actively sideboarding against, the people that the heroes that people will need reps into, the ones that people will think will make up a strong portion of the metagame that you need to keep an eye on. A being strong decks, so maybe not the definers. You might not have like dedicated sideboard slots, but still very strong decks in their own right. Wouldn't be surprised to see them in like top 8 or anything like that. Dark horses, a little bit less so. Might be like 1 in top 8. Wouldn't be super surprising. They can definitely get there. C is diehards only. I mean, obviously anything can happen. This Worlds is not a CC only event, right? So you could get a good gem luck, that blah 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 blah. So my point is, none of this is set in stone. Obviously, CC is only half the battle. Without further ado, we start with Bravo of all heroes, who I'm going to be casually sliding into the diehards only fan for now. So Bravo, much to our good buddy Alan Luber's chagrin here, is just not it this season. There is like a Count Your Blessings Bravo deck running around, and like Fatigue Bravo, and like there has been that deck that I have seen running around, but like, why is my kind of thing. Like as far as Guardians, Victor is just kind of better into this meta. I think Bravo's just kind of sitting here waiting for Guardian Mastery Pack. I don't know if you have any other feelings about Bravo.
Nah, it's kind of weird. I feel like since Flesh and Blood existed, Guardian has been like pretty good.
Yeah.
And then even in MST, Victor was like kind of good because he could beat up Zen.
Yeah.
And now just like Guardian just like delete, like it just doesn't exist. It's like
Yeah.
like Victor's like kind of a hero, and then
yeah,
I don't know, it's bizarre. So maybe with Jarl, maybe with Mastery Pack, Guardian will be reinvigorated. They do have some strong cards. Maybe when certain other big meta players leave, they will be better. But for now, yeah, Guardian's in a rough spot.
Yeah, and it's like the elemental-less Guardian too. It's kind of like you don't even get ice to back you up like Oldham did and stuff like that. Like you don't particularly have super powerful tools. So you're just a little bit dated at this point, so you need some help. Dorinthia is interesting. For the Worlds meta, I think she's sitting in diehards only. I could probably see a world where people might be able to shove her into Dark Horse. I don't personally see it. I think Dorinthia Axis is just not. It's not the meta for that. That was a heavy hitters deck. That's a mid-range deck. That's like I need to block 20 turns with Dynamo value and I win deck. It's really just Dawnblade, and I don't think you're fast enough in this meta with Dawnblade. So I'm not really sure where Dori slots in here.
Yeah, I think it's diehards only. I mean, like, obviously we're not just going off of the progress results, but the progress results do dictate some of what's going to be happening in Worlds or what we expect to happen at Worlds. And Enigma being like top deck, or maybe even with Aurora, just means like if you have a really bad Enigma matchup, it's pretty hard to bring a deck. And I feel like both Bravo and Dori are just kind of in that camp where you can't really beat Enigma. And then if you can't just beat what is probably going to be one of the more represented decks and pretty prevalent, it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. Like as a preface, I didn't say before, but we're like specifically talking about worlds here. So we have to like keep those strong decks in mind. This is not just an overall you can still bring this deck to an armory or a PQ and you could do very well, right? Especially if you're a Dori main. But for worlds, maybe not so much. Katsu, I'm gonna shove him out. The Welcome to Wraith have a bit of a trend going on right now. Maybe a bit of a refresh is needed. Diehards only. Katsu, I don't think is the best ninja. I think he lost bonds just from like friendly fire, which was kind of depressing for him because of Zen, right? But overall, he's just like one of the slower aggro decks in a meta that has very, very good aggro decks, which makes me believe like I don't know if he really has a good niche to pick him. He's not like a bad deck by any means, but like losing bonds kind of sucks for Katsu. Like he got underwhelming gust wave and he didn't really get much else. So he's just kind of sitting here and waiting. I'm not really sure if there's anything super redeeming about Katsu at the moment.
No. And like since heavy hitters heroes armor has gotten so good and that hurts actually all of these heroes now that I think about it, but yeah, Katsu usually likes using Mask of Momentum and yeah, Mask of Momentum not a good card right now, and while you can do link stuff, there's just better aggro decks unfortunately. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're running, you might well run Fi at that point, right? Like a more combo bursty point if that's your game plan. Rhinar, I'm also gonna put a diehards only to finish the quad here, or the quad Welcome to Wraith. Just again, it's a meta thing. Like he's not particular. Like he did get what Splatter Skull, I think, or something along those lines, or forgot what his new card was. The one that like intimidate, banish, or something. It's a very good card, and it's a good key piece that helps him get a little bit more disruption, which Rhinar was not known for, obviously. Which might help him a little bit into aggro. However, first you need to keep a bunch of cards back to actually play it. Like you still do need to intimidate and then get it off, and then risk them losing the card, sure, but he doesn't have like a super impressive armor suite over the other brutes. He doesn't really have anything super unique. Alpha Ram, like his specialization cards aren't particularly good in this meta, I don't think either. So like I think he's just waiting for Guardian to come back, honestly, and then he'll probably serve a lot more of a purpose, like a more controlling. Like if Jarl Control comes back, maybe Rhinar has a piece, but I think for Worlds meta, I don't know where he's coming in here.
Yeah, it's just kind of like this hyper aggressive meta, and the control-y deck, the main control-y deck is Enigma, and you're not even good into that because you can't really clear the ward. So it's just kind of it's kind of rough.
You can't clear the wards. Yeah, and like Enigma could just blurt out the hand in response to Intimidate trigger. Like it's possible maybe you don't even do anything, which is real depressing. So there goes the 4 Welcome to Wraith heroes. Now we're on to the 4 Arc heroes, which are also still on the board here. So Azalea, not the first non-diehards only. So I'm kind of straddling between Strong Deck and Dark Horse. I'm probably going to shove her in Strong Deck for now. I think I think her Enigma matchup and also like her very consistent disruption with things like Rend the Ledger and her ability to recur Rend the Ledger a lot, and things like Codex obviously, and her multiple ways of just like splurting out double-digit damage with a bunch of on hits is still very good. And her high roll is one of the best in the game, especially her turn 0 into like an aggro deck or anything like that. It's just one of the best turn 0s you can have, just like high rolling Azalea. So I think she probably deserves Strong Deck. What do you think?
Yeah, she's done pretty well at ProQuest. I think that she is a reasonable deck. I kind of agree straddling A tier, B tier. I think that she is pretty strong. Warmongers is a card that a lot of decks are playing right now, which does hurt Azalea a little bit. Of course, she has some counterplay with Long Draw Half Glove and stuff like that, but she's not thrilled to see Warmongers, and people are playing a lot of that card. Not even really for Azalea, but Azalea just kind of gets hit by it, and I think that makes Azalea a little bit less attractive. So I think she's sort of like bottom of A, top of B, somewhere in there.
Yeah, a little bit of splash damage, but I do, long draw. I think people are a lot more aware picking up some more like go wide tools without non-attacks, so less go tall. But even then, like Azalea's bread and butter is like disruption with, non-attack on hits, so not being able to do that does hurt regardless. Speaking of another deck that question mark was affected by Warmongers, maybe not so much anymore, Viserai. I think Viserai is a meta definer. I think you could also put him in strong decks. I think it really depends on. I'm going to show him meta definer for now, anyways. So obviously, this is we could
Mhm.
revisit all of this later, but I think his output is extremely high, and
Yeah.
his flexibility is high, his blocking is high, his armor is high. Yes, he still has Runeblade hands. Yes, Warmongers still can do a lot of Dura hands where like Viserai doesn't do anything if you play Warmongers. But overall, the new list, just Rosetta bringing some really great Runeblade tools, Succumb to Temptation, even stuff like Deadwood Dirge, and a lot of these like other pieces to replace your kind of poopy cards. They're were just kind of fillers in that deck. Uh,
Mhm.
really enabling him to go above and beyond where he was just kind of straddling a little bit. But where do you think he kind of fits on the world stage?
Yeah, I could see him being a meta definer. Maybe strong decks. Somewhere in that range for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
agree with everything you said. I think that him getting a bunch of attack actions with Go Again, so like Rune Rager Swarm, and then also
Yeah,
non-attack actions with Go Again in the form of Incantation and Deadwood Dirge, just means that sometimes if you draw all non-attack hands, you can just be like, oh, Incantation, 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 Deadwood Dirge, Arsenal, and it's
yeah,
like, yeah,
pretty
pretty
sick.
good.
Yeah,
Fine. And the same thing for Warmongers, right? You can just
yeah,
kind of play through it, and same thing. Like I've had Warmongers, they have a incantation on board, and they just play like Rune Rager Swarm, Rune Flash, Swarming Gloomveil, Swing the Sword, and you're like, this didn't do as much as I was hoping.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's a little bit more resilient. I like his Enigma matchup. I think that's kind
mhm.
of why he's here for now. Obviously, I think his aggro v aggro matchups aren't fantastic.
Yeah.
But his spread overall is pretty reasonable. So I think either lower on the meta definers, higher on the A. But we could probably revisit this later. Um, Dash, IE, Inventor Extraordinaire. Now, this is Dash is, and this is a deck I played a lot of earlier on, and it's such a hard deck to determine where she should be because she sometimes comes in randomly top eights or like randomly like wins a bunch of events, and nobody really knows why. And it's just like it wasn't really on anyone's radar, and Dash just comes in and just kills people randomly. The
Mhm.
flexibility of the deck is still very strong. You can play this hero a bunch of different ways. I'm gonna put her in Dark Horse,
Yeah.
just because like I could totally see someone who's just like cracked a couple matchups they think are the meta definers. She's very unlike Dash IO, which like Dash IO obviously extremely strong, not very flexible. Like you can kind of do one plan and supplement that plan a couple different ways, but you can't just switch your entire game plan on a knife's edge, which Dash IE can. You can play Slapdash, you can play Hybrid Dash, you can play Aggro Dash, you can play a whole bunch of different types of Dash pretty easily and switch between
Mhm.
two plans in a lot of lists. So I think her ability to deal with a lot of decks below her quite well, and skill expression, because Dash is probably one of the most complex decks that you can play, Dio included, honestly, or just Dash in general,
Yeah.
where people bringing this deck to Worlds probably like bringing it for a very good reason, right? Very practiced on this deck, can show a lot of skill expression. So I'm not going to put her in diehards only, just because like I think I would rather have her than any of those decks right now. Definitely those Welcome to Wraith decks right now. She could definitely take games off a whole variety of decks. What do you think about Dash IE?
Yeah, I think she's kind of like a perfect dark horse. She's just kind of, like you said, always kind of relevant.
Yeah,
And I think that a lot of people, like myself included, I think are maybe not the most tested into Dash IE right now. There was sort of some speculation that going into PQ season, she was about, I think, 100 points away from Living Legend. And I think it
yeah,
worked out to be like if she got 18 wins, she would be gone. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, Dash is going to be gone for Worlds. And it's like, well, she's not gone. She's still here. And honestly, I haven't really played a whole lot of games into Dash, maybe almost
yeah,
no games into Dash, which yeah, kind of the perfect dark horse, right? I know that there's
yeah,
some real diehard specialists. Maybe Sam Sutherland will
yeah,
stay to his tried and true Dash
yeah.
IE. I don't know, or maybe he's on
Sam,
Dash IO. Who knows?
I think
But yeah,
Merrick could randomly show up, right, and then
yeah, yeah.
play some Dash. You never know. These are players who have won events or top aided very big events with this hero when nobody really thought this hero deserved to be there. So I think that's always one to look out. Uh,
Mhm.
our last arc hero, Kano. Oh, Kano. This one got hit a little bit hard in my opinion, just for the fact that my man liked to read books and a little bit of a book burning later. and he is, I think, in diehard only straddling Dark Horse. Like you could probably make an argument for either. I'm gonna shove him in diehards only because I think there will be people who bring Kano, but they're gonna bring Kano because they really know how to play Kano, or they really like have found a list that does well enough, and they don't really want to practice a different deck. Still a strong deck, probably the top of C at the moment. But what do you think about Kano?
Yeah, I think that he's like maybe a little more viable than some of these other diehards only, but it's with the caveat that like if people have even it feels like right now, if people have even like a little bit of tech for you, you kind of fall
Mm-hmm.
over and there's still a bunch of really aggressive decks. And then like Enigma is really hard now that you've lost the books. And like
Yeah,
even a lot of people I know that really like Kano are just like, nah, not
not worth it.
Kano, not right
it's
now.
it's
And
not it.
so that kind of makes me think that you have to be like a pretty big Kano stan to want to
Yeah,
play Kano right now. But he's still powerful. Like,
yeah.
yeah, open the floodgates if they do not have counterplay to it will blow people up. So he's very, very explosive. It's just if they stop your wildfire, it's pretty sad for you. And it feels like there's just more ways than ever to stop wildfire.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, as sets go on, they just print more and more prevention, and they just like print more
Yeah.
and more hate. And Kano can't really stack the way he used to without the tomes. Like he lost two tomes. Like he probably the most hit by that because he lost two sets of cards. And Open the Floodgates obviously does draw you cards, but you do have to actually do stuff to draw those cards. So not sure. I'm not sure if a list does really well. I'm not even really sure what it looks like, but always something to keep in mind. That is the last arc hero. We're rolling into Monarch. Only two heroes in Monarch that are left here. We have
Mhm.
Levia and Boltyn. So let's start with Levia. Levia is probably the best positioned brutes where brutes are not positioned well.
Yeah.
And the number one reason for that is brutes suck into rune blades. I don't really care about what kind of tech you think you have into rune blades. It doesn't really matter when they just spew out 30 plus damage at you. And the increased consistency, and it's not really surprising just because Rosetta did have Runeblade in it, obviously,
Yeah.
and Aurora is strong, so not really that surprising. And Levia also has that issue of I can still randomly kill myself. Yeah, you have Call of the Grave, you do have some nice tech that you can swing in to do better. You still have like pretty good like Enigma matchup, possibly. I'm not even convinced you really have that good of an Enigma matchup anymore because of the
All right.
changes. Yeah, it's all right, but it used to be like I remember people used to smash that matchup, and now it's not. It's not even close to smashing that matchup. It's like you could definitely lose.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that if you're in a position where you just have to kind of high roll to go ahead, and your deck can still kill yourself, the top line damage isn't really worth the risk, in my opinion. But I would put Levia pretty easily in Dark Horse category. I wouldn't be surprised if a Levia ran hot and did well at draft and top 8 it. That would not surprise me at all. And there are some good Levia players out there that will be
Yeah.
going to Worlds. So I don't think this hero has fallen enough for people to just give up on her. And so I would expect to see a couple Levias showing up to Worlds. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with basically everything you said. She is well positioned, or sorry, she is not very well positioned, but she is probably like maybe the strongest she's ever been. So
Yeah.
it's sort of a weird thing where I don't
Yeah.
think Levia is like terrible or dead in the water or anything. But like even with the Art of Warband, I still think that she's actually quite strong. It's
Sure.
just yeah, there's just too many aggro decks that are faster. Like she kind of needs to like build up her graveyard, and by the time you do that, like
Yeah.
you're almost dead.
Yeah, like she's got like one of the most anemic go second turns you could really have because you have nothing
Yeah.
in grave. Like, yeah, you can call the grave, get a beast within in there, and try to like string something together. But really, what you want to be doing is having a turn of fill and then trying to like at least wait until you're good like Shadow Realm turns where you can like turn on like 3-4 attacks or something like that with a sash or what have you, right? But it just takes a long time, and I don't know if you actually get that time anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree.
Lo-
Face Purgatory, also a very good card against you.
yeah, Face Purgatory on Rune Blades. If you are expecting a lot of Rune Blades, it's just not. It's just not. It's just not as scary as Sorry, the flesh bag is just not as scary as purgatory, just because they get to draw a card and still come at you. Whereas flesh bag is like they get the card back. Like it's not it's
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
awful, right? And if they're playing 5 card hands and they're playing out of the arsenal, so it doesn't really do as much as you would think, because a lot of Runeblade cards are still very, very, very good. There's not a lot of not a lot of dead cards in that deck. So
Yeah.
last Monarch deck is Boltyn, and from what I can tell, and by what I can tell is what Ellie tells me, is this is a diehard only deck.
I think
Um,
so.
and I know this because if she won't even play this deck for PQ season, I don't know if there's a reason to highly consider this deck. It's just one of those aggro decks that just needs time to set up, which is just like you can play an aggro deck that doesn't need time to set up. It just could just go right away. Like you could play like Dio or Aurora or something, or even Zen, and you could just run at them. Boltyn is like Soul is very expensive nowadays in this economy. Like who has time to list out that? Like he's got so many upgrades. He's got an armory deck. The man's got L's coming out the wazoo, and yet I still can't
Yeah.
seem to put this guy above a B tier in any given meta,
No.
which is I don't know what's up. It might be like a flaw, like a fundamental issue with his entire kit. The fact that Soul is just not very well designed as far as longevity goes. But
Mhm.
I think he's like at the top of C for me. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree. Yeah, I think what you said is like just so true. He needs to set up. And I think that being a deck that needs to set up, you better be doing something pretty impressive. But he's just like, oh, here's 20 damage. But we have a bunch of rune plays that just kind of like sneeze and do 20 damage
Yeah.
without needing to set up. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think lots of armor hurts him. He has lots of on hits. Armor
Yeah.
hurts that a lot. And some people are even running cards like Dense Blue Mist lately. I've heard people talking about, and
Yeah.
it's like not even for Boltyn, but you just yeah,
It just hurts. It
it
still
just hurts.
hurts. It just hurts. I mean,
Yeah,
he's just so splash damage counterable. It's just like not. And then Jarl comes back with hike hypo, and you're just sitting there
yeah,
dying. It's just like it's so doomed.
Blizzard give you a
Yeah,
frostbite.
yeah. Like that's. I think Bolt is just dead when Ice comes back, which is kind of funny. Sad but funny.
Yeah,
Um, so we're on Uprising, and there's only one hero in Uprising that's left, which is Phi, Rising Rebellion. I think Phi is a dark horse, which is very weird to say out loud, but of course we love to meme on Ninja, just in general, right? Like that was the meme for a little while. But honestly, Phi has like this like aggressive coin flip nature where he doesn't need to set up and you don't expect it, and then you're at like 5 life, which is very funny to say, but he wasn't using Bonds of Ancestry. Like the man literally wasn't hit that much.
he
And
lost Art of War, which hurts, but you still get Link's
sure,
Salt Balloons, and Link's Salt
yeah,
Balloons very good.
yeah, it's true. He did lose Art of War, but he didn't lose Bonds, and the combination of losing both hurts a lot. But he's able to at least come out with, hey, I can still grab cards off hits. I still have like lava bursts and stuff like that. I still have
Yeah,
ways of like going above rate without having to draw cards, right? And I think being able to go above rate is kind of necessary for any aggro deck, just because there are already aggro decks to do it. They go way above rate without any setup, right? So I think Phi can at least do that. And he is also good at consistent damage. Like he
yeah.
he doesn't brick that much. Like I've played him a little bit. I was just like kind of screwing around with some of the lists, the same ones that you've seen, and he
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
he doesn't brick as much as I'd like to see, or like as much as I want to write this hero off and be like, oh, it bricks way too much. It really doesn't, which is
He's
very tempting.
he's like the way that I would describe Phi is he's just super, super consistent. Somehow does more damage than you think that he should do, or it seems like he's doing, because like you're just like, he's just playing head jabs. How can it be that good? But like
Yeah,
he just has enough power cards with Lava Burst and
yeah,
Links and all of that.
yeah,
And it just kind of adds up. And if you the way I feel about Phi is if you stumble, he can kill you.
yeah.
And decks can stumble all the time. So I think he's like a little bit on the fair side, and that's why I don't think he is as good as the other aggro decks.
Mhm.
But I think that he is fast enough that you have a bit of an off turn, and oh, you're dead. So yeah, I could see if I maybe having a bit of a surprise run, although don't super like Levia. I wouldn't be shocked to see one kind of, in day 2 doing fairly well, but
Mhm.
I'm not really expecting one to top 8 or anything.
Yeah, like I feel like if I see one in top 8, it'll be on draft and like
Yeah.
some gem luck, not really necessarily I what 9 owed CC on 5 because of 9 games of CC.
Mhm.
Not yeah, it's a lot of games. It's not a calling level, but it's still a lot of games, right? So
Yeah.
I think Dark Horse is good, kind of at the bottom of that Dark Horse level. We are in whatever set Arakni is, and I honestly forgot.
Dynasty.
Oh my god, I forgot there were heroes in Dynasty. All
Just
right.
Arakni. Well, and Emperor, but
Yeah. That's not the right tier list here. So Arachne's like bottom of Die Hard. I'm not gonna say anything about this hero other than he still has no hero ability and he has barely a specialization if you want to call it that. He's got like the corrosive tendencies, which is like good, I guess, if like that's a good game plan, but like this is so not the meta for this deck. If there was a
there
meta for the deck, it's not this one.
there's just 2 assassins that are much better than Arakni, and yeah, there's
Yeah.
just no reason to really bring him.
Yeah, I just don't know what his I just don't know what his win con is. Like I don't know. Anyways, I like Arachne's design, so he gets to go on the tier list. But other than that, we're gonna move on to a better assassin, Uzuri. I am gonna put Uzuri. I'm gonna put her in Dark Horse right now, but I'm gonna put her at like the top of Dark Horse next to Dash. I think Uzuri is really weird in that she's very flexible. She's got a good card pool. She has a very good specialization card, and she has a lot of good options. Decently aggressive early, good 2 card hand. She has like all the makings to be a pretty reasonable deck for contention. However, she does that thing where she like doesn't have any armor. She doesn't really have anything that goes above rate. Like she's just very fair,
There
and I,
there
I don't I don't know how good that is at the moment. I think she's like good in general, but I don't really know how good she is for this worlds.
Okay, it's very simple. Do you know what the problem with Uzuri is right now?
What's the problem with Uzuri? Please tell me.
Enigma.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that hero. Yeah, we haven't put that
Like,
hero on
that's
the
the whole
list yet.
problem. Like, you're fine into the aggro decks, it's, like, not bad, but Enigma is just, like, one of the top dogs, and you do not have a good game plan into her, you just don't, and I
Mhm.
think that's a really tough place to be. So I think that
Yeah.
as much as like, I think that, like, if somebody shows up, like, I don't know, I've seen Shoma posting a lot about Viserai and Florian, so I don't know if Shoma will run
No, he
Uzuri
he
back,
definitely he
but
definitely trolls and brings Uzuri 100%.
that but if somebody did bring Uzuri and only played aggro decks and like managed to do super well, it wouldn't shock me. But like you have to dodge the Enigma. And
Yeah.
I think that might be a tall order. So
Yeah,
yeah,
9 games to dodge all Enigmas. I don't know if that's super reasonable to bring the deck, and if you just write off like 1 to possibly 3 games of just Enigma, depending on how much of the meta you think Enigma is, which I think Enigma will be a fair chunk of the meta.
oh, you're also
Um,
not good into Florian. And then your aggro matchups are like, I think some of them are pretty decent for you, but like it's like not that good, Like it's not like Zen where you were
yeah,
really good into Zen. It's like there's like a bunch of different ones. You need different tools for their
yeah,
varying degrees of like good to okay. But it's just like, is this really the hero that you want to bring? I feel like there's kind of just like
yeah. It's
better choice.
very, yeah, it's very like Azuri is a good target deck. Like if you
Yeah.
know 2 or 3 decks that show up like Shoma did, was like this is gonna be a new Zen matchup. Like cool, I'll bring the deck that beats both of these, or that I've designed to beat both of these. Sure, but like I think the meta going to Worlds is super open. Like I think you'll
Yeah.
see like 4 or 5 decks with like a pretty high representation that are completely different.
Yeah.
And I don't think Azuri just has enough tools to effectively deal with all of them at a 50% win rate or higher. So I think Dark Horse is fine. I wouldn't be shocked to see her in top 8, but I think it's pretty unlikely. Um, the next 2
Agreed.
heroes are from Dusk Till Dawn, or as I like to
Is
say, Dawn
it's
Till Dusk.
Riptide.
Oh my god, is Riptide part of this Outsiders? Oh, okay. I forgot to move Riptide over. There we go. I forgot Riptide. I should have forgot Riptide. He got his own Armory deck. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I think he's also Dark Horse, but like at the bottom of Dark Horse, next to like Fi.
I think this guy's
Um,
just diehards only.
You think he's diehards only? Why do you think he's that? Why do you think he's bad? Why do you think he's diehards only?
Your Enigma matchup sucks. I feel like if you just have like a terrible matchup, it's so hard to justify. And I'm not even sure that you're like that good into the other decks right now.
That's fair. I mean, you have like your trap, you're like you have traps for almost every scenario, but I think Enigma, like, what's your only like recourse is Murkmire, but you can't guarantee it landing.
Yeah, I also don't think you can ever beat Viserai. One of the things that we like didn't necessarily talk about with Viserai, like we said, he's flexible, but he can just set up and build a bunch of rune chants against these slower decks, and
Sure.
Riptide just can't pressure that. I think you probably just auto lose to Viserai. You don't even have that much pitch. Like he's just gonna sit there, make a bunch of rune chants, draw Mordred Tide, and then I don't know, you take 30.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think like there's definitely flexibility in this build style. Like you can build him Death Dealer, you can build him the other one, his actual bow. I forgot what it's called. Um, but regardless if you're like aim counter or you're like aggro red line with Death Dealer, I think he's still just worse than Azalea at the moment
I
because
think so.
the traps just don't get enough equity, honestly. And if you're not using the traps, I don't really think there's a super great reason to bring Riptide. Even though like the majestic traps are obviously very good, but like you only get 3 of them.
Yeah, I don't think he's like the weakest hero. Like I think some of these diehard only heroes actually have some power behind them. Like Hatchet's Dori is a strong deck. It's just
mhm,
so poorly positioned, and I think Riptide is like that. Like we saw Riptide actually be a pretty reasonable choice last meta
sure.
into Zen and New, but that
Yeah.
made a lot of sense. He could be pretty decent into both Zen and New, and then you just kind of had to deal with everything else.
Mhm.
Here it's like, man, Viserai's tough, Enigma's tough. Like even
Yeah.
after that, it's how good is it? And you're pulled. I think the biggest thing is you're pulled in very different directions. Like Enigma really wants you to pressure, and the aggro decks are very aggressive, and you just
Yeah.
kind of can't. Like a lot of the mid range decks just can't cover both of them, and I think Riptide is
Mhm.
just like exactly in that category. He just can't deal with both
Yeah.
of them at all.
That's fair. Yeah, okay. I think moving him to diehards only is fine. Now we're on Dust Till Dawn. Or Dawn Till Dusk, depending on how you want to look at it, right? So we'll start with Vynnset. Um, I've played a lot of this hero randomly enough. I don't know why I played so much of this hero, but I thought this hero was like secretly broken. And I have played around with this hero a little bit with the new Runeblade cards, especially like Deadwood Dirge and stuff like that. Because a lot of Vincent's cards before Rosetta were kind of poop. Like they were like
Yeah,
filler cards where you kind of had to play them because you needed blood debt filler or you needed like banished targets or both in this particular case. But a lot of them kind of left a lot to be desired. And they didn't let you play super wide turns was my big issue with it, right? Like you're stuck with a lot of mid-rangey 2 card hands without disruption and you're trying to go for value and then aggro just takes it and hits you for more value, or you end up being in the position where the fact that you have to like banish a card every single turn just really ends up being, oh, I have a Runeblade hand, I can't banish anything good, I just die, right?
yeah.
So I think the upgrades she got in Rosetta are quite strong, and I have played against a fair few of them also, and I've been kind of impressed with the high, like the high roll on Vynnset's actually very good when you're
Mhm.
looking at like you can play 3 or 4 attacks, generate a bunch of chance with Deadwood Dirge into like deadly whale. So like whale, close the chain, dirge, play something else, like etc. etc. You can chain quite a bit. You have creepers. You could play succumb to have that actual ability to gain the action point, get a little bit more disruption. She is definitely sharing a little bit of the Runeblade pool that obviously Viserai got. However, I think at its core, her main issue is that she is very limited on how many strong Runeblade cards she can play that are not Shadow and are not Blood Debt, because at the end of the day, you're playing on a 3 card hand without an arsenal, or a 4 card hand with an arsenal, whatever you want to call it, right? And there will be turns where it'll do nothing, right? Now, I will say that she is a lot more resilient to warmongers like Viserai after Rosetta. She can
Mhm.
do pretty much the same things that you mentioned beforehand,
Yep.
where you're just setting up, and it's like doubly good for Vynnset because then you can just use it for an attack for free, pretty much, no matter what you want to do. And it's very important to get things like widespread destruction and annihilation out as quickly as possible, where it was kind of really hard to get them out in a 2-3 card attack turn, where it's much
Mhm.
easier now with cards like Dirge. So she did get all those power pieces. I think I think bottom of Dark Horse is kind of where I'd pull her, just because that I think she could like slaughter some random people without any like I don't think people are testing against her really,
No, I
and
don't think.
I think people are probably underestimating her. And I'm not saying she's like an S tier deck, but they're probably underestimating her a little bit too much. And I've seen some like 30 plus damage turns that didn't really take that much setup. A little bit of setup, but not that much setup. So
Mhm.
for that reason, I think her damage potential alone and her more resilience to warmongers and less shit cards, just very verbatim in her pool, kind of allow her to be a dark horse in my view. What do you think?
Yeah, I think she has a good top end. I think that she just suffers from a little bit of the inconsistency that you mentioned. I think until she just needs like a little bit of a bigger blood debt, you can play this from banish card pool, especially on
Yeah,
the non-attack side. And I think that if
yeah,
she had that, then you could solve a lot of problems. But as it is, even though she has gotten more powerful and she has better enablers and she is more consistent, you just wind up in spots where your deck hates you a little bit too much and your late game is really, really bad because the banish is mandatory. And between those two things, it's just like feels like it's not quite worth it. But I do agree. I think the deck is probably both underexplored and also probably better than people give it credit for. She
yeah.
can do some pretty powerful things, especially if you just like if you have no idea what this hero does and you're like reading her cards for the first time and you take an on hit that you're not supposed to take,
Yep,
could be bad
I've
for
done
you.
that. Yeah, I've done that
Yeah.
early on. You just like forget you took a rune chant and like you full block an annihilation. You still have to discard your last card. You're like, oh shit, that's for the
Hmm.
entire turn. It's yeah. You could it's like Prism. Like you can spook people, and it's
Yep.
gonna take people by surprise for sure. So I think I like bottom of Dark Horse. I think she can pull out some nifty stuff, but and I think she's better than the C tier heroes. Just by card quality alone. So I think I'm fine with putting her there. Prism, not Sculptor of Arclight. The other one is this one Sculpt? No, this one is Awakener of Soul. I think this one's
Yeah,
Awakener of
Awakening
Soul.
Soul. Yeah.
I'm gonna let you start with this one. I have mixed thoughts about Prism.
So on one hand, she lost the Tome of Divinity, which
Yes,
enabled a lot of game plans for her, and I
yes,
think certainly just makes her way weaker and less robust. On the
mm-hmm.
other hand, there are not we haven't gotten to many of the top tier decks, but there are not very many decks that are running a whole bunch of poppers, and your Herald aggro plan is still very much intact with the new Luminaris. So I think that she could potentially be kind of good into some of the aggro decks, especially if they aren't prepped for her, especially because they probably don't have boppers for her. That being said, um, I imagine Viserai is probably still a bit spooky, and I think that decks like Aurora just can do a lot of pressure. You still don't have very much life total, so you are a little fragile. I think that she's probably a pretty good dark horse though, where you get the list tuned for aggro, you play against aggro decks that aren't really prepared for you, and maybe you can get something done. Not totally sure, but I think
That's
that it's
fair.
hard for her to be better than that.
Yeah.
She's okay, but I don't think she's fantastic.
Yeah, I tend to agree with like Dark Horse level. I think she losing Tome hurts quite a bit because like
Yeah.
that high roll off Tome was kind of insane and could win games when you really don't deserve to. I mean, it's why it's part of the reason why they decided to ban these cards, right? But it's also for Prism, for this particular Prism, obviously drawing the cards to be able to uh, play more angels and at least have that kind of game plan to go a little bit wider if they have like a lot of poppers or something along those lines was very, very crucial. And playing Arclights, obviously, very, very much easier with the tome to play multiple pieces and then just end on Arclights and be go. And then your entire board is just safe, right? That's just no longer the case. It's also a little bit worse in general with Arclight just because there's more cards that give you action points now compared to beforehand where you essentially like way back had to run like time skippers and shit like that, right? I think
Yeah.
if you have a lot more alternatives essentially is what I'm trying to say. So decks aren't as, you know, necessarily as threatened by Prism. Now, she still can do some pretty disgusting stuff. Her power level is still pretty high. The other issue, though, is you start at such low life relative to this power that you're supposed to have. And I think without the tomes, it's just like less, starting at 36, yeah, you get an angel out for value, you get one piece, and it's pretty much equivalent, but not really. If you think a lot of the top decks are going to be aggro, it's just like starting at 36 is just way worse than the pros that kind of come with it. I think that's kind of how I feel about her.
Does she have 36 life?
Am I wrong? Is it not?
Doesn't she have 32 life? Am I crazy? Yeah, she has 32 life.
What am I thinking? Who am I thinking with 36? I mean, I'm thinking about Oscilio. I think Oscilio is 36.
She has 32 life. 32 life is not very much life. I think maybe the biggest problem of Prism is like, at least conceptually, I think her Viserai matchup should be really bad. He just kind of accidentally runs poppers. Like he runs
Amplify, Ninth
Blade. So he just has 6 poppers. He kills you really fast. On the turn that you make the Arclight, he can potentially just like make a bunch of rune chants and break your Arclight and hit you anyways with the rune chants.
Yeah.
And he's really fast. Oh, and Face Purgatory seems really good against Heralds. So I don't know. Maybe somebody will figure something out with Prism. I don't think people are testing into her, and I think that she is fundamentally kind of powerful when you're to connect. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe kind of like Levia. I'm not sure it's the right meta for her, and I think she has some holes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So we're on to our favorite set of Flesh and Blood, Bright Lights. Oh god. Yeah, the Bright Lights heroes are it's so stark. You have like Maxx, Teklo, the Dio. So let's start with Maxx and Teklovossen first. So Maxx, I think, is a diehards only. This hero was B tier for a little while with the Mechanoid package, where you got because this hero got Supercell, right? That was kind of the big pickup lately. So you got Supercell, you got Mechanoid, and you just kind of beat down with Mechanoid and High Octane and just run at them. That was kind of the combo that you were looking for to finish games. I think that Maxx needs a slower meta to really thrive, because he's just not fast enough with his kit to be like an quote-unquote aggro deck, but he's also just doesn't have immense value other than Mechanoid. So, and you also randomly might lose to those brute cards. If you run to brute and you just randomly lose because they smash your shit, it's just very sad. And there will be brutes will show up. It doesn't matter. There will be 5% brutes at least, is my guess. So having a detrimental matchup into those decks also is just doesn't really seem like much reason to play Maxx.
Yeah, I think the common thread in this metagame is decks that need to play a very, very long, or decks that need to set up first to get going and then can do something powerful are just too slow right now. Enigma runs you over, the aggro decks run you over. You just don't have time to build a Mechanoid and then try and turn the corner. It's way too slow right now. And honestly, I think Teklo kind of has the same problem, right? You need to play your Evos, then play your Singularity, and you're just already dead.
Yeah, does he have a cool Marvel? He does have a very cool Marvel, but the problem is you're never gonna get to play it. So all that money you spent on the Marvel, it just sits in your deck box. So I from a financial perspective, just not a very good deck to play. But other than that, I definitely agree that it's just not it for them right now. Dio, on the other hand, we're gonna shove Dio in the meta definer, and Dio got some insane upgrades from Armory. I think this is probably the biggest jump from an Armory deck. I know Kayo got Sash, sure, but Dio got essentially was not even Dio was a deck, but super fringe, right? And very exploitable, and just matchups she just couldn't win. Cerebellum and a whole bunch, and just she got what, 2, 3? She got a piece of armor upgrade, arguably more, but one for sure, and then 2 main deck cards, 1 item, and then 1 attack that was it locked and loaded? No, Fast and Furious. What am I thinking? Yeah, very, very, very good cards, right? And it just kind of elevated her to top tier aggro status seemingly overnight, in my opinion. And yeah, she's still exploitable. There are cards that are definitely target her. She's not like, weakest link can still hurt you. She doesn't block that well. Like some of her hands just don't block. Some of her hands don't do anything.
Yeah.
You could be running around looking for an item all day and they're just not on top. You could be boosting your items all day. My issue is just like, it's a very small issue for a very strong deck. The consistency is, even for an aggro deck, extremely random. And
Mhm.
you also have you also have a temperamental weapon, essentially, where
Yeah.
you need to do very specific things. You don't even have that to fall back on, right? And so very, 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 very good deck. Definitely a meta definer. People will definitely be preparing for Dio. Dio has like pretty good stats among the board, like Talishar stats, PQ stats, just like all around good stats, I believe. And
Mhm.
I think she'll be a pretty big chunk of the meta. What do you think about? I know you've just put a shit ton of time on Dio, obviously, among other decks. But what do you think about Dio?
Yeah, Dio's really interesting. I think that she's definitely a meta definer in that everybody needs to have a plan into Dio. I think that when we first started testing Dio, it was like, holy, this deck's insane. It's so broken.
Yeah.
I think as people developed plans, that became a little bit more into question. She seems really good into other aggro decks,
Mm-hmm.
but she's vulnerable to fatigue, like you mentioned. She's vulnerable to disruption. And she's really vulnerable to warmongers too with Cerebellum Processor. And unfortunately, when you play the Cerebellum, like whenever I play a Cerebellum Processor and I like pass an Arsenal my high octane, I feel like I just like put up like a neon sign saying like play Warmongers now. And if
Yeah.
they do, like your turn often just falls apart. Sometimes you can kind of boost through it and it's like sort of okay, but yeah, this deck is somehow simultaneously really powerful, but also has lots of problems. And I think that this is maybe the biggest question mark going into Worlds is how far will people be able to take this deck? Will people
Mm-hmm.
be able to solve and shore up those matchups? I think if you can get the disruptive and fatigue matchups good enough, she's
Mm-hmm.
probably just the best deck.
Yeah.
But is it possible to do that? I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out, and I still don't
Yeah.
know. To be honest with
Yeah.
you, I'm like, maybe I play this deck, and then I beat Enigma a couple times, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then I don't beat Enigma a few times. I'm like, oh, maybe I can't take this deck, and it's tough.
Yeah.
But she's definitely, yeah, she's a meta definer that could perform more like a strong deck. I could see a lot of people taking her and not doing well, but I
Yeah.
suspect my gut says that there's something there, and there will be a few players who have put in the reps and have really cracked the code and will do well with Dio. That's sort of my
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah. I tend to agree. And the vulnerability, like the high is super high, and some games you get just a couple non games, and you could go into Worlds and be like, I have 9 games. There's a pretty good chance like one or two of those games you just there's nothing they can do. They just sit there and they die. And you know
Mhm.
what? Those are pretty good odds if you want to take those odds, and it's a very good strong deck outside of that. So that's Dio here. We're into heavy hitters and not great all across for the heavy
No.
heroes here. Let's just start with Betsy and Olympia. Get those guys out of the way. Diehards only, right next to Arakni for Betsy, and then right with Olympia. We're on a second line for Diehards only now.
There's a lot of
Um,
diehards only.
it is, and I don't have anything to say. Like Betsy is just got the Bravo issue. You're just not even the best Guardian. It's not a Guardian meta, and Olympia's
Not
like
even the second best guardian.
you're not even this. It's true. Well, I think you're tied with Bravo. Honestly, I
Maybe she's
honestly,
got her new spec, but
yeah. It's like
either way, it's not good. If you're tied with Bravo, it's still not good.
it's not good. Olympia is just like I don't know what that new card does. Like I'm still like waiting to see someone like go to the anvil and just like actually visit the golden anvil. No, it's the goldman estate. But I forgot what the anvil card does.
I
Um,
think I think if other things are too slow, visiting the Golden Anvil
it's
definitely too slow.
it's definitely not even the name of the card. We're all just like butchering this guy. But Olympia is just
Isn't
like,
it?
is it visit the golden anvil? I know it's visit the goldman estate. I honestly forgot what. I know it's an anvil in the card name, and that's about it.
I'm
I
looking this
think
up. Visit
Okay.
the Golden Anvil.
Is
That's
it?
what it's called.
Did I actually get
Yeah,
it? I
yeah,
thought it
it's
was.
called Visit the Golden Anvil.
Okay, I guess we'd rather go to the Gold Main Estate, the Golden Anvil here, but
Yeah, sweet.
I don't really know. Like maybe someone at LSS cracked this deck and it's just like laughing at us. They're like Golden Tower or something, but like I don't know what's up with this hero for now. Wage doesn't do anything. I'll wage a bathroom break and then just leave for a
I,
lunch break. Like I'm not really sure why you're supposed to win with this deck, but
I,
I don't know.
yeah, I don't think warriors are in a good position at all right now, largely
Yeah,
due to Enigma as well as the aggro decks that can just set up and go way over you. But Olympia is also probably the worst
yeah.
warrior. So yeah,
Yeah. Finishing up with Warrior, we got Kassai, which I'll put at the top of the diehards only list. I think Kassai is still strong, and people are definitely underestimating Kassai. And there are likely, like, I know there are diehards that are going to want to bring Kassai just because you put a shit ton of hours into them for heavy hitters meta and kind of roll into that. She got Unsheathed. Unsheathed is a good card, obviously.
Mhm.
And it makes the deck better like, at front loading damage, which was a bit of a problem that she had beforehand. However, I still think a main win con for this deck was Dynamo, which doesn't really exist when all the decks are aggro and it's more of a
Yeah,
mid range, slower meta.
so Viserai can set up and go over you.
Yeah.
Aurora can arc flicker you.
Yeah.
Enigma just plays wards and then you can't clear them and you lose. It's a little
Yeah.
bit rough to be Kassai.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Die Hard only is fine, just on the higher end of Die Hard only, next to like Riptide, I guess, or something. I don't even know.
Yeah.
And then Kayo, my boy Kayo. Trust me, if there was a way that I could legitimately bring this deck to Worlds, I would have gone to Worlds. I could tell you that for now. And unfortunately, I think he's Dark Horse to be fair, but I think he's there because his overall power really hasn't changed, but he still has that like 10% chance of just winning the game where he's not supposed to win the game, but
Yeah.
you just like win the game somehow. You just roll insanely hot. It's a very like Levia. It's really just brute, right? But KO can do very similar things to Levia, but he doesn't have that blood death thing hanging over him, right? So where you can discard a blood rush spell, and God knows I've done that a lot off like a pulping, you don't just die over it, right? So it's two very different things
Yeah.
here.
He feels like a little bit more consistent, but also a little bit more fair, I guess, compared to Levia.
Yeah. His he just has the same issue with rune blades. Like you're just a dog into Florian. Like Florian is insanely hard.
Yeah.
Viserai is not easy. Just Florian's very hard. And then Viserai, Aurora is not as bad, but still not great. I think that like the only decks I would want to run into as KO is like Prism, maybe an Enigma's okay. You could definitely
You,
lose, but you could definitely win.
you
And then
know,
like Azalea and Victor, which is like that's not really where I want to be.
yeah, you know how I feel about KO? You know how like KO in heavy hitters was like the consistent deck and you're like he's not really like that good into anything, but he's not really that bad into anything. He's like kind of
I
like
do. Yes.
50, 55, maybe 45 into everything. It
Yeah.
feels like that, but you just take like 5 to 10% off all of his like meta matchups and it's like he's
Yeah.
not that bad into anything. He's also really not favored into anything either. He's just kind
Yeah.
of like 40, 45 into everything with like maybe a bad matchup in there and it's like wow. Like
Yeah.
you could do worse, but like you could do a lot better too.
Yeah. Like I don't see like yeah, if this deck didn't just like randomly lose a game out of 9 by like discarding Blood Rush off the top, it'd probably be
Mhm.
higher. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of having to run this
Yeah.
deck in a very aggressive style to be able to even get over Enigma. Like you've had to
Yeah.
change this deck from a mid-range deck to an aggro deck just to beat Enigma. And because
Mhm.
you do that, like Weakest Link now just shits on you. And like cards
Mhm.
just didn't do this much before, just kill you. So I think enough with KO and the Dark Horse. I think it's reasonable. Last heavy hitters hero, Victor, I think he's also a dark horse, but like also kind of a similar situation as KO, where like your spread is it's obviously different. You could do pretty well into aggro decks. You still have a shit ton of armor. Clash is still pretty good. You still have good disruption. Goldmane Estate is still a very, very good card. But like I don't really think I think people will definitely bring this deck. It'll be like 5% or something like that, and they're gonna try to feed off a couple very specific decks. Is my view on Victor.
Yeah, I agree. New and Enigma are rough for you. I don't know.
Yes. New and Enigma are very rough for you. But like if you run into aggro, I don't know. Gem is gem, right? Like
Yeah,
I've seen like I've seen
maybe
very like questionable players make it very far, and they're like watch them in top eight. I'm like, how the hell did they get into top eight? And it's just
yeah,
like,
maybe you play
yeah,
9 Dios. I don't know.
you know
I
what?
haven't played that match. Well, I've played that matchup once. I'm pretty sure it's pretty good for Victor.
It's pretty good, Vic. You like
Yeah.
block and then clash and then Goldmane and hit them with disruption. You like spinal them and they just die, and it's just like, oh, okay, I guess I do nothing. But then you just get to keep doing it over and over again, and you're like, oh, I guess you're dead now. And then you just finish the game with your specialization, Golden Sun, and it's just like, oh, cool. So that's the rest of the heavy hitters. Rolling into Misfailed now. We'll start with Zen. So I think Zen is going to, for me, be up. So Zen is either on Dark Horse or Strong Deck. I'm not honestly sure. Like I've played him a little bit, and honestly not a ton. Post Bonds Art of War. Obviously, he got gutted quite a bit. However, his overall strength was still very high to begin with. So you're just making him more fair. So really, it's you don't get to do 50 damage anymore, but you
Yeah.
still. Sorry, that's kind of laughing as I said that out loud. But you still get to
Mhm.
do like 25 damage, like consistently, like relatively easily. So that's not a bad deck, and you have Zen State, right? So the Zen State's honestly why I straddle between Strong and Dark Horse, because his aggro potential honestly isn't as high as like Dio and the Runeblades for me. But Zen State's a hell of a card. And if you can
Mhm.
get an early transcend, like if you get a turn 0 transcend, you're very happy. And they have like a mediocre turn 1 on their side, you're probably going to win the game. Like you can lose for sure, but you're in a very good position to win the game. So I think into like the Runeblades. So if we're expecting a lot of Runeblades to show up, I think Zen definitely becomes a strong deck. But you still get eaten by like New. But then you're okay into like Enigma. So I think I kind of like him in strong deck. Now that I'm saying it out loud, what do you think?
Yeah.
You
I
just
don't
like
know what to
don't.
think about Zen.
You
I
do
feel
not. You
like
do not like Zen very much.
I feel like I think if you talked to me like a week or two ago, I'd be like, yeah, Zen. And I was on the same page that a lot of people are, where it's like he's well positioned, he's like really solid into Enigma, and then like you're good into Viserai with the Zen state, and like you're
Yeah.
pretty good into Aurora, and like maybe you can play like Flick Flax and like defend out against like Dio, and like
Yeah.
maybe this deck will show up. I feel like it's done like fine at PQs. I think the deck is like much better than many people originally thought. Um, right now I'm sort of like maybe he just is a dark horse. Like I don't know. He's either strong deck or dark horse. I think he's very well positioned. I think he might be slightly underpowered.
Yeah.
Um, he's fine. It wouldn't surprise me if people like some strong players seem to like Zen, but I also feel like I hear a lot of stories about like so and so was on Zen at their PQ and then they lost in semifinals. And I'm just like, why are all these good players like bringing Zen and losing in Zen? I don't know if that's like anecdotal or what, but I just like, I feel like everyone's like, yeah, his win percent creep up. And it's just like, nope, he still won 4 PQs. And I'm just like, maybe he's not that good. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see at Osaka. I think he's reasonably well positioned. I don't think you're making a mistake if you're bringing Zen, but it does feel like a little bit of a meta call more than like you just like look at Zen and you compare him to like Viserai or Dio or Aurora. Is he as powerful a deck as them? Like, no, I don't think he's as powerful a deck. He's well positioned. He has some good tools into them. And for me, like, yeah. So I don't know. You could put him at like bottom of strong decks or like top of dark
Yeah.
horse somewhere in there. But I think that he's like notably weaker than the other decks, but gets
Sure.
a lot of points for being well positioned. So that's kind of what I'll say
Yeah.
about Zen. And we'll see if that converts into good results in Osaka or if he just continues to be like there, you know?
Yeah. Notice me, senpai. Gotcha. He
Yeah.
has very good. He has above average targeted defense, but below average offense. Is kind of how I would summarize him. Like, yeah, you can play wax on, wax off, and you have Zen State and shit like that, but it only works against very specific heroes, right? So, yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of agree. I'll put him at the bottom of strong decks. I think that's fine for now, right next to Azalea.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
Nigma. Nigma is a meta definer. This is
Definitely.
this is like I'm probably putting her at the top of meta definer, right? Second Viserai, third dash at the moment. But
I think
I
so.
think Enigma is just like probably 15 to 20% of world's meta is my guess. I think she is one of the most consistent decks that you can build in like 5 different ways and still be top tier, which is kind of insane when you think about it, right? Like you can build this deck CYB, you could build this deck like Iris Refractor and still be pretty good. You could build the deck normally with more auras, less auras, more block. I've seen like 5 different decks do super well. And I think that bodes super well for Worlds specifically because they don't know what you're on, right? This is especially if you're coming into Swiss, they don't know if you're on CYB. Like they don't know anything, right? It's a matter of you get that breadth of flexibility, but you're also like, I have Mirror Guy, lol, check this out. And then you put your headpiece sideways, and then you get a free card from your deck. And then you hit him for 8, and they can't clear it, so they die. Like you just get games like
Yeah.
that. Pretty
Yeah.
good.
I think that she just get like 1 to 2 times per game gets to just like play out her Mirror Guy and maybe like follow it up with a CNC or Arsenal, a Do React or something. And
Mm,
she just goes, "Hey, can you right now deal with this? No,
yeah.
you lose. Game's over. It's
Yeah.
done." And even if you do clear it, like we're still playing a game. It's not
Yeah.
over, you know? Like she's just like, "Nah, I still have like Tunic, Miraging Metamorph, seen some
Yep.
decks on Phantasmaclasm. There's
Yep.
like Pummel decks, there's just like Fatiguey CYB decks. There's just like
Yep.
a bunch of value in there. She gets to play Levels of Enlightenment with her cheese. She gets to play Restless Coalescence. I've been seeing people like lean more into the Mirror Guy plan and like Astral Etching is their Mirror Guy because they decided that 8 power wasn't enough. So,
It's
you
not
know, we got to
enough.
make it 14 and 7
Yep.
ward because like
Yep.
why not?
Yep.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Deck's really good. And I think that there's like this perception that she's really bad into aggro decks, and I think some of the decks are good into her. Zen and Viserai in particular are solid into
Yeah.
Enigma. But as we fill out this top tier, you're going to notice that it's mostly aggro decks, and I don't think that there's any way that Enigma one of the most winning decks and doing so well if she is not also like pretty
Yep.
solid into these aggro decks. Like I think she like stomps the non-aggro decks and then she still just like gets to play flesh and blood with the aggro decks and like maybe she's a slight dog into some of them and that's a great place to be, honestly. She's really good.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with all that. I think she just the balance between what she's able to do is just extremely impressive. Probably the most flexible deck in Fab across the board as far as and that's like a yeah, it's been out. Obviously, Fab's been out for the longest it's been at this point. Yeah, da 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 da. But like in general, the pool is just super deep. So I think that's going super well for her. The last
Mhm.
one we got new. It's kind of interesting that the misfail heroes are all kind of seeing sticking power, like between set by set, because you have like heavy hitters and they've just like fallen off the face of the earth, kind of thing. In Rosetta meta, like the heavy hitters heroes are just kind of and misfail meta. Like they were here, but not really, because like new shit on Victor, blah 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 blah. So I think it's pretty interesting that the misfail heroes are still pretty well regarded here. So new, straddling between strong deck and dark horse for me. I think she's like bottom. If I'm putting Zen in strong deck, I think it's disingenuous to put new not in strong deck because I don't think new is weaker than Zen. I think she
Yeah.
just has different strengths, as in she has very good matchups into things like obviously Victor. Her disruption's very good. Like if you see Zen, you're super happy. Uh, I think her like Dio matchup could be quite good. Like you could roll super well and still fatigue out decks. Like you have that flexibility. If they let you
Mhm.
do if they sit there and try to set up and you just like, here's Bonds of Agony. 3
Yep.
cards, go. And then you have a headpiece that like if you transcend, I'm gonna take a card anyways, right? So it's a very, very, very disruptive deck, and I think that bodes well. You're probably not psyched to see a bunch of Enigma. I think that's a
Mhm.
winnable matchup, but it's not a.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a favorite matchup. As
Mhm.
much as new mains, I don't know. I don't think I've seen new mains that actually say it's favorite, so I wouldn't say that. But I have seen some lists do better into Enigma, depending on the Enigma list. However, it's definitely more fair, right? So I
Yeah.
think she's kind of probably like behind Azalea in front of Zen for me, kind of in the middle of strong decks. I think she's a little bit stronger
Yeah.
overall, but I don't know how, like, I do know that she can beat these top decks via kind of a variety of strategies. I just don't know how consistent they are, honestly. And so that's kind
I
of my only question mark.
I agree. I kind of feel like new is still like kind of fundamentally really powerful for a lot of the
Yeah.
reasons you out. Just super disruptive, hard to play against, fatigues people, mask, codex. She just has a
Mhm.
lot going on. She gets to play levels of enlightenment.
Yeah.
Just yeah, very, very good hero. And I kind of think that the people who are like new diehards, I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to take new, like maybe some of the people that made top eight in Amsterdam. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them wind up back on new because they have a lot of reps on that deck and they understand her. But I think she's a lot less of a slam dunk than she was in MST, where you're good into Victor, you're really good into Zen. You just kind of need to figure out the mirror, and then you just have a pretty solid choice. It's like no, there's a bunch of different decks. You kinda need to account for all of them. They all kinda need different tools. So, like, we talked about Uzuri being really good with the target. New is kind of the same way, and I think she's a bit better equipped to deal with everything right now, but I do think that she's still pulled a little bit wider than she'd like. And
Mm.
she's kind of in the spot of, like, you have a bunch of matchups that you can win, but none of them are easy. They're
Yeah.
all hard. You have to work for every single one, and I
Yeah.
picked up this deck for a bit and was like, "Maybe I play new," and I played some of the Enigma matchup, I played some of the Aurora matchup, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"This isn't bad, but it isn't good."
Yeah. It's not as winning as it needs to be,
Yeah,
essentially. That's fair.
yeah, yeah. So I think that she's a strong deck. I think really good pilots will find success with her. I think it's
Yeah.
harder to want to be new than maybe last meta.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that. I think these are long days. Like
Yes.
4cc 3 draft. What is it? Was it 5cc 3? I think it's is it 5
Yeah.
3? Yeah, so it's 5cc into a draft, into another draft, into 4cc. Like these are long
Mhm.
days. I don't want to be on a deck where like this thing drains my brain 50 minutes past playing an Enigma, and then I see another Enigma, and then like I barely lose or barely win, and then I see another Enigma, and I'm like, God damn it.
Mhm.
Um, I wouldn't want to be in that scenario. So like obviously the better players will know the matchups better, but it doesn't mean this deck is easy to pilot. So we are on to Rosetta Heroes. I'm going to start with the more obscure ones, I'll say. We're going to start with Oscilio. Now, I've seen some pretty cool, I'm going to say cool Oscilio lists running around. The more combo oriented. Well, I think realistically speaking, Oscilio does have to be a pseudo combo deck because, like, you start at 36 life. He does start at 36 life. And you just don't have like an insane amount of tools to do much else. But you do have some powerful things you can do on the aggressive side. So I think Diehards Only is pretty real. I think this hero just needs
Yeah.
more time to stew. Honestly, I think we're just too early. This deck's too complicated in my view. Based on the fact that Rosetta just came out, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to think this deck can be cracked at anywhere near a level as like Viserai, who's been out since Arcane Rising, or like things like that, right? So I think Diehard Only is fine for Celia for now.
I think I agree. There's some powerful pieces there. I don't know that he quite has the tools though. It sort of seems like he's just like a little vulnerable to disruption, not quite consistent enough, quite not quite explosive enough. And
Mm.
I kind of feel like it feels like he was meant to be played with the tomes and we just don't have
Yeah.
them.
Yep. I
So it
agree.
feels like maybe he just needs like one or two expansion slot cards and he can be there. I don't think he's like so far off, but it feels like he's missing something.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody will, crack the code and bring a Cilio deck and wow us all. That wouldn't shock me, but
Yeah.
if you ask me to guess, I think the tools I would guess the tools aren't there more than I would guess the people have. That's sort of what my
Yeah.
gut says, but I could be wrong. It wouldn't surprise me if I'm wrong.
Fair. I think Verdance is in a pretty similar spot. I think that people are a little bit higher on Verdance than Oscilio off the get go, just because it was a little bit easier to see what her win con was, and she did have like a top eight calling right off the bat in Europe, right? Like she
Mhm.
definitely had representation. There were two in one of the American Battlehorns. There were like two in top four. Or I think Levi brought her to finals and lost her, or the PTI event or the Battlehorn, one of those two. Um, she definitely like has legs. So she's got for just coming out, she's got some reasonable results. But I think probably the top of Diehards Only. I think she again, she might need a slower meta. I
Yeah.
don't know if this is like she just really like you want a life gain, but you're also just being hit with a whole bunch of shit all the time. So you're like you need time to like rampant growth life and do damage. And your best combo is good, but it's not like Kano gonna blow you up from nothing kind of thing. You still need a bunch of stuff. So I think Diehards only is fine for Verdance.
Yeah. It feels like the aggro decks are just like a touch too fast for you. You can win, but it's like stressful. It seems stressful and kind of hard. And
Yeah,
then Enigma is like kind of a nightmare for you.
yeah,
Into mid range though, really, really good. Like I think
yeah,
she's like really solid into Florian. She's probably pretty solid into Guardians.
yep,
Probably pretty good into Brutes. I think it's just not the right meta for Verdance. I don't think she's a
yeah,
bad hero, but yeah, I think it's tough to want to be her now, unfortunately.
yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I don't. Yeah, I agree with. I think I agree with most of that. I actually don't think she's good into brutes. I think she definitely gets shit on by brutes. At least
Okay.
when I was testing KO, I think I've ran into a whole bunch of Verdance and she did a whole bunch of nothing. I just ran at them and they just kind of crumbled. They can't. They
Yeah,
just don't.
maybe.
It's just too like that like the aggro KO like the KO you need
Sure.
to beat Enigma. That splash damage just kills Verdance essentially. But like
That
yeah, if
that
you
makes
run the
sense.
mid range, if you run the mid range without on like scabs and stuff, but I think with bean trackers, you just like run right through them. Um, last two heroes, the most spicy, or at least the definitely the ones with the best results by far. Yeah, we'll start with Florian. Um, I started putting him on strong deck, and then as the weeks went by, I'm kind of thinking he's more dark horsey, but like the top of dark horse. Um, he has a lot of very good. First of all, I think he's the easiest deck to build. I think his options are a little bit more limited because of his hero power, right? So you're a little bit more restrictive on the cards you can play compared to like Viserai, where there's just Runeblade cards. It's everything, right? Um, but to build Florian, like there's very specific tools to do above rate things, right? And I think people realize that pretty early on. I don't think there's anything shocking with Florian. Yeah, you can run him like OTK style with Scepter Channel. There's that build too. I've seen that build running around. I don't think it's particularly great, but it's okay.
No.
I think the mid range Florian is what's going to show up. I think he has some issues, to say it lightly. I think he shits on like a lot of the decks below him. I think like
Yeah.
the decks below him, some of them are just super free, like KO. Like Florian just shits on KO. It's just hilariously bad, like maybe 30% at best. And like that's really good. Like having a bunch of those decks combined, not being able to beat you up is a solid place to be. But I think you can try to fatigue Dio. I think at the top level, Dio probably gets through you. I've seen Enigma be pretty good. Like I've seen Florian beats Enigma. I've seen Enigma beat Florian. I think it really just depends on the pilot and the deck. But I've seen them go both ways, honestly, depending on the build. Uh,
Yeah.
Viserai doesn't seem great. Viserai seems pretty bad, actually. I would say.
Yeah.
And Aurora doesn't seem hot either. You're just kind of there. You're a little bit slower because you're mid range. What between like strong deck, dark horse? What do you think about Florian?
It's so weird.
His
Results
stats,
point to
yeah,
him being a strong deck. I've
yeah,
heard that Japan really likes Florian. I
yep,
know Shoma Yamamura has
yeah,
tweeted about Florian quite a bit,
yeah,
and it sounds like he might be choosing between Viserai and Florian. Maybe, I don't know. Like he tweeted some images like
yeah,
looking
yeah.
back and forth at Viserai and Florian, and I'm like, maybe he's on Florian. So I think that there might be something here. I'm not sure. I can't tell if he is, from my perspective, it feels like he is maybe slightly overrated. But I could also see that maybe I am missing something. I think that there's a few ways to build this deck. I think that you can build the mid-range style that we talked about. I think you can build into the channels, which a lot of people have been doing. I've seen tree or heroic, or like some decks are just like playing both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's to help shore up that Enigma matchup. And my big question is like, how close is the Enigma matchup really once you tech for it? Like, is it actually close? Talishar says 45%. Is it actually 45% into a really good world level Enigma? I'm not sure that
Mm-hmm.
it is, but maybe. And then once you tech your deck for Enigma, how good are you still into everything else? And then Viscera is also a problem on top of it. I think you actually are pretty good into Dio. Like it might be 50-50 ish. And you're like good into Azalea, skill matchup into new. probably super favored into Zen if I had to guess, and solid into Aurora, but
Mm,
which is like fine. But yeah, for me, it really comes down to that kind of deck innovation. Can people account for Enigma? Like basically, Florian has a problem with the decks that he needs to be able to pressure, which is Viserai and Enigma, and then also accounting for the aggro decks. He's in that
yeah,
mid range conundrum that all the other mid range decks are, where they're pulled in too many directions. And
yeah,
I think that Florian is like super super powerful. He has
yeah.
great equipment. He has Felling of the Crown. I think he's just kind of the king of mid range right now.
Hmm.
So if there's a mid range deck that can do it, it's Florian.
Yep,
Is this the time for mid range right now? Not so sure. So yeah,
yeah,
keep an eye on Florian. I could see him living up to his stats, but right now I kind of think he's going to underperform relative to his PQ days. Is sort of my gut feeling. I feel like he's like a bit of a. Feel like he's a great PQ deck. Like you can beat people worse than you really easily with Florian. He's like a great skill check, has a ton of agency, just super good value. You make a couple inefficient plays, he's just gonna walk all over you. But
yeah,
into top level players, maybe a little bit on the fair side.
yeah. That's fair. I'm gonna put him under strong deck only because I look at the dark horse heroes like Dash, Uzuri, Prism. I think he is like a notch above them,
I do
5
too.
in set. So I think strong decks like next to new, like probably to the left or to the right of new, whatever you want to put it, is fine. But
Mhm.
like a pretty strong markdown from the meta definers. I don't think anyone is teching for Florian. I don't think anyone's teching for Florian. So I think strong deck is fine. Aurora is our last hero. What do you think? Meta definer, strong deck? Before we talk about her, I gotta shove her somewhere.
I'm not sure. One thing that stands out to me is, so on one hand, she has the results that would indicate a meta definer, right? She's
Mm-hmm.
been neck and neck with Enigma. I think that she is very powerful, pretty flexible, very consistent. Just has lots of on hits, lots of ways to get value. She kind of has her own cerebellum processor. Like I've played some like Dio Aurora, and I don't know how good that matchup is for Aurora overall, but Channel Lightning Valley and Cerebellum are like kind of the same card. It's like kind of funny. um,
Yes, true.
One of them has to hit, one of them has to have an action point, but they are like actually very similar. So I think Aurora is
Mm-hmm.
like super powerful. She has this Flicker Wisp combo. She's a really really good deck. But unlike some of the other meta definers, I don't know, like it feels like you just kind of like play your game into Aurora. Like it feels like Viserai, Dio, and ask questions of you, and you need to kind of shape your deck and your sideboard for it. And
Sure.
Aurora's like, I don't know. She's just like good, but
Yeah. Strong deck, good.
she's kind of like vanilla. You know what I mean? She's like a
Yeah.
really good vanilla. It's sort of like maybe like KO before, where it's like KO's really, really, really good, but it's like I don't know if you have to like build in a particular way to deal with KO. He's just good.
True. Yeah. KO
You
had that
know?
thing where it's like people just ran good decks that were into KO in general. They didn't really like tech
Yes.
specific, weakest link or whatever, I guess. Yeah, sure. But like it was just a deck thing, not really a card thing. But I think Aurora at the top of strong decks is kind of where I'd put her.
I
So it'd be
think so.
Aurora. It'd be Aurora, Azalea, Florian, New Zen in strong decks, and I think she is the strongest out of those 5. Just overall power
Yeah.
level, she does disgusting things. She's very. She's probably the hardest deck to actually lock down for things like Warmongers and such.
Mhm.
She's very difficult because she has a bunch of instances. She can gain action points in very, very weird ways. She can run a bunch of go again, and Warmongers doesn't do anything, right? So it's a matter of being able to get to her level and as far as damage output, or be able to disrupt her enough that you can try to play your own game plan. But like I don't know if any deck is really trying to do that, and they're just trying to do whatever. Like Azalea's just gonna run in and do Azalea things. I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is Aurora. I'm gonna run specific. Oh, well, I'll run the ledgers, run the ledger, right? So I think that that's still kind of the idea, but I also do agree that I think people are running reps into her to know what to side, but I don't think they're siding specifically for her. I could be wrong, but it's kind
Yeah.
of what it feels like. Very, very strong deck, though.
Yeah, and part of it could be that she's just kinda, like, fundamentally a good deck, but, like, super exploitable. Like, she's actually
Yeah.
surprisingly resilient. She
Yep.
runs all these no blocks, but, like, she has somersault, she can play D-reacts, she
Yep.
can kind of get around disruption because like a lot of
Yep.
her cards are replaceable, and you take a 4 and the rest of them are all 4s with go again anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like she's almost like S tier power level, but like A tier in terms of like not being so meta defining. She reminds me a lot of Kayo from Heavy Hitter. It's like
Sure.
this deck is obviously one of the best decks. It's very well rounded, pretty good into everything. I don't know that she has any like super good matchups, but I don't know that she has any like terrible ones either. And I think she's just like
Yep.
good choice, you know?
Yep. Big numbers, no real disruption. That's it's just like
Yeah.
the KO mantra. And Aurora fits it pretty well.
Yeah.
Very good armor suite as well. Obviously, same idea. Like not broken headpiece, but very, very, very good headpiece. Very, very similar. So I do agree that correlation is good. So we have Enigma, Viserai, Dio, then Aurora, Azalea, Florian, New Zen. Do you have any issues with that S and A tier? Those look pretty good to me, actually.
Yeah, no, I think that that's about right. And yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of settling on something very close to this. And it'll be interesting to see if Worlds will kind of reinforce this or
Yep.
if it will shake it up. You know, like maybe we'll have some under or over performers and we'll see some decks move up or down a little bit. And it'll be, yeah, I'm excited to see.
Yeah. Last question for you here. What do you think the top 8 composition will be at Worlds with these heroes in mind? Take a guess.
Top 8 composition.
It's
I
tough
think,
because draft, I know, but like it's
yeah.
9cc. It's 9cc this time, so it's actually way more heavily focused on CC.
I think there will be something along the lines of I'm going to go with 3 Enigma.
Okay.
I think there's going to be at least 1 Aurora, maybe 1 to 2 Aurora. Let's say 1 Aurora for now.
Sure. So you got 3 Enigma, 1 Aurora.
1 Dio, I think with 1% make a run with that deck.
Sure. That's reasonable.
So I got this to 5. Maybe a
Yep.
new in there.
6.
A Viserai and
7.
I don't know what the last slot is. I think another Runeblade. I think I see the last slot being any of Aurora. Another second Aurora, second Viserai, or maybe a Florian. Although that one I'm the most dubious on.
Fair. Okay, I can see that. I think I'm pretty similar. I think like 2 to 3 Enigmas is pretty fair. I'd probably say like 2 Enigmas, a Viserai, an Azalea, and Aurora, a Dio. I think a new will sneak in there. I'm gonna shove in like one of the dark horses. Probably just like I want to say just like Victor with the Jeb Blessed Gods. Just get there at 8th seed and winning Worlds would be hilarious. Every single Worlds 8th seed always wins, which is just insane to me. But I don't know. I think out of all the dark horses, I think Victor has the funniest road to get there, but I could totally see it. Just 6-0ing draft and getting all aggro and just like running into top 8 with the horse with like the cold foil civic steps on the arms. So just like, I don't know. It'd just be hilarious. I want to see a painted horse in top 8, just the horse as the hero. Someone do that, please.
So great. That'd be so funny.
You
know why I know there's going to be a new in top 8?
Why?
Because I think Xing's going to be. I don't know if Xing's going to be on new. I just know he event and he top 8'd, and I feel like Xing's been top 8ing everything. So I'm like, Xing's going to top 8 on new. I believe him. He's just going to like show up and beat everyone up again. But that guy is way too good at Flesh and Blood.
So I guess Pudding just needs to dodge if he's bringing Zen. He's probably not bringing Zen, but
I wonder what he'll bring. Maybe he'll bring like.
I have no idea. Maybe he will bring Zen. I don't know. Maybe he's just like that's the deck.
Maybe he'll bring like.
Lightning Ninja.
Aurora, Lightning Ninja. Aurora, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Pudding will play. I feel like he usually always plays Ninja. So yeah, maybe Zen or Aurora as the honorary Ninja.
I said one Zen. It's like, oh, maybe Pudding will show up and just play Zen. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll just like have another top 8 with Pudding and Xing. Yeah,
it's just gonna be like half blue pitch. Yeah, I can see it.
Alan Lau on Dash IE.
No, he's gonna bring Dash IE and prove everyone wrong.
Oh, Dash IE. Okay, sure. Yeah. I could see that.
Have like a Nitro Mechanoid sideboard, something insanely random. No, anyways, we're getting super off here, but this is the tier list. So if you like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Yuki, any kind of last words before Worlds? You excited?
Yeah, no, I don't have too much else to say. I'm looking forward to going to Japan, both for Worlds itself, but also just to go to Japan. Very cool place, and it'll be fun to hang out with friends there.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing everyone, and yeah, no, it's been fun chatting with you. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
No
it.
problem. If you want some more content from On the Bobble, we'll have the link in the description run by Yuki and Jay on a lot of good draft content, a lot of good CC content. If you want to see in-depth deck text and, of course, draft content, it's a good place to go. And with that, from wherever watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.